Hi and welcome back to Bike Speed. This week we're going to be riding this, the first ever Giant TCR. I'm going to talk you through some of the history of the bike, talk about the components on it and tell you my riding experience. So let's get riding. In 1997, Giant started producing the first ever total compact road frame, the 1997 Giant TCR, and it's one of those that we're riding today. This bike is in as new condition and has the specific design features that Mike Burrows put on this bike that mean it is the first edition, the very first one. Mike Burrows was a carbon composites designer in Norfolk in the UK, and he came up with this concept bike that was later developed by Lotus and used in the Olympic Games, the Lotus 108 bike, which most of you would be familiar with when that's said. But at that time he couldn't get it sanctioned by the UCI for usage in competition, and after a few years he lost interest, and Lotus saw that bike and took over the development and made that iconic bike that Chris Boardman used. But during that time, Giant, who were the world's biggest mountain bike manufacturer, had picked up on Mike Burrows and had took him on as a design expert. And he was riding around the factory one day on a mountain bike that he'd put his own aero forks on and a road bike group set. What made that bike so special that eventually developed into this bike was that up until that time all road bikes had a horizontal top tube, and you had your step over with very short steep seat posts. What that meant was manufacturers who were looking to produce new bikes had to produce around 10 sets of jigs to allow for all the different sizes that they were going to sell. And of course that was very costly on the off chance of whether a bike would sell or not, to develop a bike in that way. Morning. But what Mike Burrows realised was that in the mountain bike world there were three size frames: small, medium, large. And it was to do with the angle of the top tube, longer seat posts and a smaller triangle position of the frame. So he developed the theory of a compact road bike where you had smaller triangles, the top tube at an angle, which is the iconic design of the Giant TCR. For the first year to 18 months of the design being produced, again the UCI wouldn't approve it for racing. They said it was too radical and a step away from traditional designs and that they wouldn't use it. But Giant persisted. They said that it would transform manufacturing, make it cheaper for everyone, and eventually the UCI did approve it. And in, I think it was 1999, the Onze team was sponsored by Giant Bikes and started winning races, and the icon of the Giant TCR was born. But up until that point, this was very much a concept bike, a concept design with concept features on it. And as I've worked on this bike, we serviced it on the channel. Do check that out if you haven't seen it. But we serviced this bike, and as I was working my way through it, the quality of the bike and the design features on the bike, it really is special. It's really now the go-to design for all bike manufacturers. You never see horizontal top tubes anymore. You always see these compact designs, very aero, very fast, very sporty. And this bike, this very bike that I'm riding, was the bike that started it all. Riding it this morning, it's amazing how it just feels like I'm on a brand new carbon fibre bike. The design is really quite astounding. This one has the Mike Burrows wheels. I think they were a little bit of an indulgence on his part for carbon fibre. I'll stop and show you in a moment. The spokes are around 10 mil wide, very, very wide spokes, carbon fibre, but I've got a couple of spare spokes for this bike and I weighed them and they're heavy. So the wheels are very heavy. The hubs are amazing. I'll show you those with the massive drilled holes in them. But in terms of practicality and use, they're no different to any other wheel. From my early riding here, they're not that aero. The front end on this bike feels a little bit heavy. That's probably in the geometry, but could also be to do with those wheels catching the wind. It's a little bit breezy here this morning. But what a joy to be riding the first ever road bike. In terms of road biking as you or I know it today, this is the bike that started it all. This is the bike that brought bikes to the masses. An iconic British design, very, very special. I feel quite privileged to be riding this bike, and it's down to the YouTube channel that's allowed us to consider bikes like this and to bring them to you. So if you have subscribed and you are a subscriber, it's that has made it all worthwhile and got us to this stage. And if you're not subscribed, do subscribe. It's the way you can, as a YouTuber, see your channel growing, and it's what makes special bikes like this worth the investment. So hit that subscribe button. So let's talk you through this bike. So first of all, we've got the 105 SC group set on this bike. This is the 105/6, which denotes its 8-speed with the trigger shifters up here. Up until this time, most road bikes had shifters here on the down tube, and this was one of the first bikes, really a mainstream bike, to feature the shifters up on the hoods. Very, very nice group set. This was kind of between chrome and anodized metal, so all these components are painted grey and they're a lovely finish on these. Then we have the stem. This was the EXT Pro stem that Mike Burrows developed. It was an adjustable stem, again with this 3-size design, small, medium, large. He allowed this to come up and down and be adjusted. You could also buy this in a 105mm, a 120mm, which is what we've got here, and a 135mm. And they have these lovely spacers down here, which traditionally on a quill type stem that this is, you wouldn't have these spacers, but the idea is you could take those spacers out and lower this down and have that nicely finished and detailed into this roller bearing headset. This whole thing here is actually a thing of beauty. It really is lovely. Then we had the carbon composite forks that Mike Burrows developed himself. These are carbon fibre and was one of the first road bikes with those to be available mainstream. Beautiful design on those, the way they arc down. You can see the carbon weave inside there under the lacquer. Really, really very, very nice. Then we have the Mike Burrows wheels. These are an aluminium wheel with the massive wide spokes and the massive drill holes here in the center of the hub. Really, really beautiful, beautiful wheels. You don't see these very often, and you certainly don't see this design in the modern world, but like I say, they haven't really made an awful lot of difference to the riding, but they're just a thing of beauty. Design wise, this is absolutely amazing. Working down, obviously you have the sloping top tube, which is a regular modern design instead of that horizontal tubing that would mean you'd need many, many sizes to produce the bikes. This was the whole concept of this bike and what really makes the TCR Compact the absolute design icon that it is. A lot of them came with an aero seat post. This one actually hasn't got that, but we have got one of those back at the workshop. But in order to get this to my height, it actually did us a favour, because this was on the bike when we got it, and I'd imagine that the rider who originally purchased this bike would have been a smaller rider, and that's why that is like it is. We've got the 175 cranks on here, quite a big crank really, but even down here we've got this lovely canvas chainstay protector here with the Giant logo on it. Absolutely original and perfect. 8-speed cassette, nice. I haven't really noticed this. When you compare this to a modern 11-12 speed, you would think you'd really notice the difference in the gearing, but you know, this is a lovely little gearing on this bike, and I haven't really noticed it as being lacking gears. It's just an absolutely beautiful thing. So that's the Giant TCR. The other thing I also noticed, I looked inside the wheels and the hub obviously when we were servicing it. It's got sealed bearings in all of these components, which at this era was almost unheard of. This really is a concept bike of the day. It was really one of those bikes that Giant invested quite heavily into the design. Mike Burrows clearly poured his heart and knowledge into this bike, and it's absolutely amazing to ride. So let's get back on the road and give you my summary of the bike. It's actually a very aero bike, this. I'm tucked right in here. It's probably because it's a little bit long for me. One of the design nuances that carried through to later Giant TCRs is the shape of these handlebars. They're done in sort of 3-stage angles. I'm now sat nice and firm and flat on one of those angles, which is quite nice. It really is a joy to ride. And it's amazing because it feels no different than a modern bike. That's the thing about it. It doesn't feel the age that it is. I've ridden a lot of the old steel bikes. None of them feel like this. This really feels taut. I feel like I could go racing on this tomorrow. The wheels are firm and solid. The bike feels agile. The gear shift on these 105s is as good as anything modern. It really changes up and down the gears. Quickly, responsive. It's hard to believe this group set is as old as it is. Everything about it is nice. I've got adjusters up here on the handlebars. Nice and easy to trim the gears. Definitely the front end is a little bit choppy, a little bit, I can feel the movement in the handlebars like this. But I think that's a generational thing, with a quill stem that's adjustable, the roller bearing, headset bearings, the composite forks, those Mike Burrows wheels, the narrow thin tyres, all add up to that slight instability in comparison with a modern road bike. But likewise, on the flip side of that coin, is I can feel the road. I can feel what the bike's doing, which actually is really quite nice. Can accelerate out of the bends. Very, very nice. Do check out our website if you're looking to service your bike over the coming months. It's what enables us to continue to bring you videos, and it's through that support that we've managed to get hold of this bike to bring to the channel. So all that's left for me to say as I head back now is my very traditional bye for now.